Welcome to Created by Design. My name is Linda Eld, and this is my very first episode of Created by Design, and I have to tell you, I'm terrified. But this has been something that's been on my mind over the last few months. I'm sure because of COVID, we're all feeling that disconnect from one another and missing on being able to share and make connection with people that in the past we didn't even think about it. We just got together over a cup of coffee. Well, getting together on the internet isn't going to be quite the same, but at least it's going to be, I hope, a spot that we can come together, those of us that like to craft, or maybe you call it your hobby, or just maybe it's your passion, and we can share. Kind of think of it as maybe the refrigerator, where we put our stuff up, showed off our work. And hopefully it's going to be that kind of a place for you, a place that we can connect, learn from one another, and a place that we can maybe not feel so isolated. A little bit more about craft. What is our craft? I do something with my hands. I knit. I journal. I doodle. That's what I'm focusing on these days. But maybe you are a bread maker. Maybe you are a cake designer. Maybe you are a landscaper. And that's your passion, that's your craft, that's what you excel in, that's what you feel gratified in. So hopefully you will find that this group is a place that you can, show some of your techniques, share with one another. Just because my main focus is knitting, it doesn't mean that's the only thing I'm interested in. I love to watch other people's processes. I'm not a wood maker, but I've been known on a Saturday morning to watch the woodworker on Channel 10 and watch them do their fine work. I appreciate that, and I enjoy watching people perfect their craft. I think there's things we learn by watching other people, even if it's not the specific craft that we're working with, but we can learn from one another. And so I hope you will post pictures, tell a little bit about what you're working on. And as we go along, I'll have a focus each week that will help us maybe choose some pictures or some stories. I read a quote the other day from a gentleman by the name of Robert Greene. Now, I don't know anything about Robert Greene other than if you looked him up on the internet, there's a lot to be said about him. Apparently, he's a very bright man. But I'm going to just take this quote. I'm not in support or not support of him. I'm just using this quote because I thought it was very good. He said, "To learn requires a sense of humility. We must admit that there are people out there who know our field much more deeply than we do. Their superiority is not a function of natural talent or privilege, but rather time and experience." I thought that was so very good, because it leads us into realizing we can learn from one another. It's really good to have a mentor, or find people that do what you like and see what they're doing. Why are they successful with it? Over the last several years, I've spent a lot of time looking at knitting artists that I admire their work. They've stretched me to try what they're doing, and it's grown my ability by looking at other people that have perfected a particular field. There was a day when people would say, "What's your craft?" And it was a very respectable word. I think it's kind of over the years lost its meaning. When that was asked years ago, it was maybe a person was a saddle maker, or they did wrought iron work. They took their talent and actually made a living off of it. We kind of do that today some, but I think there's been a devaluing of a person's craft. And we ourselves don't value it or realize the importance of it in our life as maybe we could. So I would like, hopefully, this group to be able to tap into that and bring a value to our craft, and hopefully bring awareness not only to other people but especially to ourselves. I think our craft, maybe you call it your hobby, maybe it's your passion, it's part of who we are, and maybe we don't value it as much. I think we were all created to create and design. So, how has COVID affected you with your crafting? Has it given you more time? Have you not been able to craft because of this COVID season? For me, it's been having a craft has been a lifesaver. I've really focused on my knitting, and I don't want to tell you how much knitting I've done. I've done a lot. I've made a lot of projects, but it's been a real lifesaver for me. It's been a time that I've actually tried new things and experimented in ways that I would have been too busy in the past to have taken the amount of time that I could during this season. We've been very careful not to be out and about, and so we've stayed in a lot. And I've thought and wondered, what do people do that don't have a craft to concentrate on or experiment with? And I'm grateful that I have. The project I'm going to show you that I've worked on during COVID is really quite random, but I have a reason for showing it because it's no pattern per se. I totally experimented, and it's a throw. You'll only be able to see part of it probably. It's just a lap throw. I use it. It's great. It's wool. It's wool from the Shetland Islands. And at another time, I'll talk more in detail, maybe about some of the fibers that I like to use. But while there are a lot of different patterns and color combinations in this project, this is one that I started out with very little design going on in my head. I just started out at row 1, picked some colors out of my knitting stash, and I purposely planned it that way, not to have a plan. And I wanted just to see what would happen. I wanted to experiment with colors. I've done a bit of painting in times past, and mixing a wet medium together, you can come up with all kinds of colors. Very different working with a dry medium when you're blending strands of yarn side by side to see what the effect you are going to get. So I've had a lot of fun with this particular little throw. It actually was knitted completely in the round, and for knitters, you'll understand that it was completely in a circle, and there was a thing called a steek that I built into it as I was knitting. And when the project was done, I cut that open so that it could lay flat. And then I picked up all the stitches around the edges and I knitted a border, so the border folds over the edge. This is what the back side of this type of knitting is called Fair Isle or strand working. And you're knitting with 2 colors at a time. 1 in each hand is how I do it. Some people use 2 strands over 1 finger when they're holding the yarn. I do a strand in each hand, and I knit in 2 different methods to get the project knitted. But anyhow, this was a total experiment, fun, random, didn't know from one row to the next what pattern I was going to work on. So it was a complete freedom for me. And as you can see, there's just quite a lot of color combinations in this. And this stretched me because I'm usually working with a pattern and following a pattern, but I didn't want to have it all laid out. I wanted to actually have a freedom when I made the project. I got some ideas from one of the knitters that I really think a lot of. Her name is Alice Starmore, and she's made this book of designs, which is just all kinds of black and white graphs. So some of them I took directly out of the book. Some of them I took ideas and made them my own. I changed them up, and this project was a lot of fun. And it's something that I probably am the only one that's really going to appreciate it because it was such an experiment for me and playing around with color. I love color, and I love to see what happens when colors are put together. And so that's what was accomplished here with this project. I'm not sure how long this took me, maybe the better part of a month, I guess, about that. And so it's got a lot of hours in it, really, but love having an end product, something that you can use. And I will refer back to this many times to see how colors complement each other. I threw out the color wheel, didn't follow any rules about how colors should be put together or not put together. I just let my eye be when I looked at my stash and pick the color. I went with it. Behind me here is my stash in all these bins back here. That was the other thing that I did during COVID. All my yarn was in somewhat organized, but it was all in my guest bedroom closet. So I always had, if we had company, I had to make sure that was all kind of tucked away, and I'd get it out during the week, and it was all over the bed. And so one of my determinations during COVID was to get that organized. And so I rearranged this room that we're in. It's our little office, and one half of the room behind me is all my knitting stash and items that I use for knitting. And on the other side of the room is my doodling and journaling. And so right now I've spent most of my time with the knitting over this last year. So that's going to be what my post is about. I'll post some individual pictures, but I would encourage you, please post some pictures, tell about yourself or what the project meant to you, if you learned something from it, or if you were challenged by it, and just what was the effect of your crafting for yourself during this COVID season. So that's going to be pretty much the end of this episode. I'll have another one next week, and at the very end of this video, you're going to see some pictures from one of our adventures to Peru. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you enjoy connecting with us at Created by Design. Thank you.